9 races of the 2026 season are behind us, and Max Verstappen does not have a single win. That might be fine for a rookie. It might even be acceptable for a driver who has spent his entire career in the midfield. But for the best driver on the grid, a 4-time world champion with 71 race wins, it is absolutely unacceptable. He is more than 100 points behind the leader. 7th in the Drivers' Championship. Hello, I am Silver Tiger. Today I will be talking about the possibility of Verstappen leaving Red Bull and what it could lead to. Let's start with why we are even asking this question in July 2026. The new regulations reshuffled the grid, and Red Bull landed on the wrong side of the shuffle. They are strong on the engine side, but they have not found the right path with the car design yet. Mercedes is flying. Kimi Antonelli leads the championship. George Russell sits second. Ferrari is back. Lewis Hamilton is third in the standings, and Charles Leclerc won at Silverstone. Meanwhile, Max is on 76 points, behind both McLarens, in a car he openly cannot stand. And the car is not just slow. Twice this season, first in Austria and then at Silverstone, his rear wing failed at high speed. At Silverstone, that failure sent him into the gravel. After the race, he called the car dangerous. The most fearless driver of his generation is telling his own team that the car scares him. But here is the part that worries me the most, and it is the reason I wanted to make this video. According to the latest reports, Red Bull has stopped listening to him. In Canada, he wanted a different setup direction. The team was convinced their way would work. It did not. At Silverstone, he asked for an engine change and a setup overhaul, even accepting a pit lane start. The team said no. He retired from the race anyway, so they scored 0 points either way. And according to Dutch media, Max now genuinely feels unheard inside his own garage. In Formula One, the driver is the most sophisticated sensor in the car. When that sensor is a 4-time world champion, probably the best of his era, and you stop trusting his feedback, that is no longer a technical decision. It is a cultural one. And in my opinion, it is a huge mistake. One more detail changes everything. Max's contract officially runs until the end of 2028, but it contains an exit clause. If he is not in the top 2 of the championship at the summer break, he can leave. He is currently 7th. That condition can no longer be met. The door is open, and according to reports, he has until early October to decide whether to walk through it. To understand how Red Bull got here, you have to look at who is no longer in the building, because dynasties rarely collapse on the track first. They collapse in the corridors first. The story probably begins in October 2022, when Dietrich Mateschitz, the co-founder and the quiet protector of the racing project, passed away. The power struggle that followed touched everything. And then the departures began, one by one. 2023, Chief Engineering Officer Rob Marshall, 17 years at the team, one of the architects of the dominant cars, leaves for McLaren. McLaren's rise since that day is no coincidence. 2024, the big one. Adrian Newey, the greatest designer in the history of this sport, announces he is leaving. He joins Aston Martin as a technical partner and shareholder. The 2025 Red Bull was the first car in almost 2 decades without his fingerprints on it. That same year, Jonathan Wheatley, the sporting director who ran the best pit crew in Formula One, leaves to become a team principal in the Audi project. And Will Courtney, the strategy brain behind so many race-winning calls, takes the road to McLaren. Mid-2025, Christian Horner, the only team principal Red Bull Racing had ever known, 20 years in charge, is sacked just days after the British Grand Prix. Laurent Mekies takes over. End of 2025. Helmut Marko, the man who put a 17-year-old Max Verstappen into a Formula One car while everyone called it madness, leaves too. And 2026 has not stopped the bleeding. Craig Skinner, chief designer for 20 years, left in February. Paul Monaghan, who had been there since the team's very first race in 2005, is reportedly heading to Cadillac. And the most personal one of all, Gianpiero Lambiase, known as GP, Max's race engineer through all 4 of his championships. The voice in his ear has signed with McLaren from 2028. This is not a reshuffle. This is the operating system of a dynasty being uninstalled piece by piece. And the last pillar, still standing, is Max. Are Max Verstappen's best years being wasted at Red Bull? Max is 28. He turns 29 in September. For a Formula One driver, the late 20s and early 30s are the absolute peak. Maximum experience, still elite reflexes. Every season spent 7th in the standings is a season of that peak that will never come back. And because of the cost cap, you cannot spend your way out of a bad car. Max himself has said the upgrades will run out at some point. Let's be realistic. 2026 already looks like a lost year. So the real question is this. Can Red Bull build the best or the second best car on the grid again? This year, it is impossible with updates alone. But next year, why not? There is a well-known truth in Formula One. With every new set of regulations, the teams get closer to each other as the years go by. So if he leaves, where does he go? Before we go team by team, let me say what I truly believe. Put Max Verstappen in equal machinery against anyone on this grid, and I cannot see a single driver beating him over a season. Not a single one. My evidence is last year. A machine that started 2025 as maybe the 4th fastest car on the grid, and he still lost the championship by 2 points. That is exactly why this conversation matters. Every team principal on that pit wall knows what he is worth. Let's start with Mercedes, because for 2 years that was the obvious answer. Toto Wolff chased him openly. But look at the irony. That door now seems half closed. 19-year-old Antonelli is leading the World Championship. Russell is reportedly locked in for next season. Why would you break up the strongest lineup in Formula One? Unless something dramatic happens, I would call Mercedes the least likely destination today, which is a sentence I could not have imagined saying a year ago. Then Ferrari. The romantic option, and this year, finally, a serious one. Second in the Constructors' Championship. Leclerc winning races again. Hamilton still delivering podiums at 41. Every legend ends up linked with red eventually. And Schumacher showed what a resurrection project in Maranello can turn into. A Verstappen and Leclerc pairing would be pure cinema. The problem is arithmetic. Both seats are filled with superstars. Unless Hamilton decides to close the book at the end of this era, Ferrari looks more like a 2028 topic than a 2027 one. And McLaren, the loud one. As I write this, multiple sources are reporting that talks between Max's camp and McLaren are at an advanced stage, and there is an even wilder version of the story. A straight swap, with Oscar Piastri moving to Red Bull. Now, McLaren categorically denies it. Piastri's manager calls it nonsense. Piastri himself calls it noise. Fine, but 2 details keep this story alive for me. 1. Max's own race engineer, GP, has already signed with McLaren from 2028. 2. McLaren has a long history of ruthlessly upgrading its lineup when a generational driver comes onto the market. Norris and Verstappen in the same garage would be the most explosive pairing since Senna and Prost. And yes, someone in the comments will definitely ask, what about following Newey to Aston Martin? A poetic idea, but Aston has scored exactly 1 point all season. Even a genius needs time. Some on the Red Bull side will say that Max leaving would be a betrayal. Max is Red Bull. Red Bull is Max. Emotionally, I understand, but let's look at the history books. Because at the very top of this sport, one-team careers are the exception, not the rule. Ayrton Senna, Toleman, Lotus, McLaren, Williams, Alain Prost, Renault, McLaren, Ferrari, Williams, Niki Lauda, Ferrari, Brabham, McLaren, Michael Schumacher, Benetton, Ferrari, Mercedes, Lewis Hamilton, McLaren, Mercedes, and now Ferrari. Not a single one of them spent an entire career under one flag, and moving never made any of them smaller. Sometimes the move is the legend itself, Schumacher turning Ferrari back into an empire, or Hamilton gambling on Mercedes in 2013 while everyone laughed. Max, on the other hand, has spent his whole life inside one family, first Toro Rosso, then Red Bull. More than a decade, one badge, and that is a beautiful thing. But if he leaves, it will not be treason. It will be what the greatest have always done. This sport remembers what you win, not where you parked your motorhome. There is one more scenario. Max Verstappen taking a break from Formula One for a while. Max Verstappen saying farewell at the very top of the sport, like Michael Jordan, and racing in another series for a while. Max openly dislikes these new regulations. He says they have taken that feeling away from his favourite tracks. He has been saying for years that he will not be racing into his 40s. He became a father last year, and he is obsessed with endurance racing, truly obsessed. He even entered a GT3 race at the Nürburgring under a fake name and won it. Basketball fans have seen this movie before. 1993, Michael Jordan, 3 championships in a row, walks away at the absolute peak, goes off to play baseball, comes back, and wins 3 more. And Formula One has its own version of this story. Niki Lauda quit in the middle of a race weekend in 1979. In his own famous words, he was tired of driving around in circles. 3 years later, he came back and won another world championship with a different team. So, can Max take a year off and come back hungrier than ever? Well then, is Red Bull just an ordinary team without Max Verstappen? History actually gives us an answer, because Red Bull has been at this exact point before. At the end of 2014, Sebastian Vettel left. 4 consecutive world championships, the golden boy of the team, off to Ferrari. That day, many people declared that Red Bull was finished. But look at what was actually inside the building. Daniel Ricciardo had just beaten Vettel as a teammate and won 3 races. Carlos Sainz was rising through Toro Rosso, both genuinely top-level drivers and both already inside the Red Bull family. And alongside Sainz, there was a teenager named Max Verstappen. In May 2016, Red Bull promoted that teenager mid-season, and Max won his very first race for the team at 18 years old. And that kid did not just fill Vettel's seat, he surpassed him. Vettel finished his career with 53 wins and 4 championships. Max already has 71 wins and the same 4 championships. And last season, despite starting the year in a car that was nowhere near the fastest, he missed a 5th championship by 2 points. Just 2 points. Which brings us to the question every Red Bull fan is quietly asking. If Max goes, who is the next wonder kid? 2 names. The first is already in the car. Isack Hadjar, 21 years old, promoted after a single brilliant rookie season that included a podium at a track like Zandvoort. Some are already calling him the new Verstappen. The second name is Arvid Lindblad, 18 years old, in his rookie season at Racing Bulls. The youngest British driver in Formula One history, fast-tracked so aggressively that the FIA granted him a special super license exemption at 17 for outstanding ability. Before leaving, Helmut Marko practically declared him the next Max, and the junior team is performing well this year. And there is a third, stranger possibility. The successor might not be a wonder kid at all. If I were Red Bull, I would do everything in my power to keep Verstappen in the team. Honestly, that is the option I lean toward the most. You hire thousands of engineers and spend millions of dollars to make your car 0.3 seconds faster. Verstappen does that comparatively cheaper and more directly. Drivers like Max come along once in a generation, maybe once in two. Between Vettel's last championship and Max's first, Red Bull waited 7 years. Wonder kids are real. They just do not do same-day delivery. Max will finish 2026 with Red Bull, and the real decision will come this autumn, together with that clause, which is reportedly open until early October. If the 2027 engine data and the new car concept convince him he stays, because deep down that team is his home, and the Ford project was built around him. If they cannot convince him, then I think it will be McLaren, and we will watch the biggest transfer of this decade. The optimist in me still sees two beautiful futures, either a Max who climbs back to the top with a rebuilt Red Bull, or a Max who proves his greatness in new colours, just like Senna, Schumacher and Hamilton did. Either way, we are watching one of the greatest careers in the history of this sport live. So tell me, where is Max on the 2027 grid? Red Bull, McLaren, Ferrari, Mercedes, or will he take a break? Leave your prediction in the comments. I read every single one. Thanks for listening. See you in the next video.